Welcome to Weekdays with BYU-Idaho Radio. I'm Hannah Hannaberg, and today we're joined by Gary Eller. Welcome.
Hey, good to be here.
Good. So, Gary, could you tell us a little bit about your background as a musician?
Okay. I grew up in West Virginia. Lived in many places since then, but in most of my adult life has been in the American West. 30 years at Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico, and the last 20 years up here in Southwest Idaho at Pickles Butte, Idaho.
Wow.
And I grew up hearing, loving story songs. Being an Appalachian kid, the music of Appalachia is filled with what are called event ballads, songs about real people and real events. And I have played bluegrass all my life, which is filled with event ballads, and early country music too, which also are story songs. Been in many bands. We got up to Idaho and started looking for Idaho songs, event ballads. I could hardly find any. That starts the saga of the Idaho Songs Project about almost 20 years ago.
Wow. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Idaho Songs Project and what its mission is and impact?
Yes. Our mission is to find, document, interpret, and preserve pre-radio era story songs of early Idaho. And radio came to Idaho around 1923. And that's also when mass-produced recordings became available to the common person. And that was a big marker because after that, regional distinctions in music tended to get homogenized.
Mm.
I think just before that, some very far-sighted folklorists at the Smithsonian, Library of Congress, academics were scouring all the states because they knew what would happen when mass communication came, as far as really true roots traditional music was concerned. But you know what? They didn't get to Idaho.
Oh, so now the project is to find it.
Yes. My theory is that Idaho musicians had their own songs, but then they started hearing recordings and radio play of people like the Carter family and Jimmy Rogers of Mississippi and Delta blues music, and perhaps they thought, they must be good since they've been recorded, but nobody had been recorded in Idaho. And so I believe they tended to drop their Idaho music and started singing about places that they would never get within 2,000 miles of. And that tradition kind of continues to this day to some extent. So that was the opening for me. And the way I describe it is that the Lomaxes never got to Idaho. John and Alan Lomax, two of the greatest of American musicologists who rescued so many songs, never got to Idaho.
Wow.
That's my theory. At any rate, so that's the opening. Now people have tried. The great Rosalie Sorrell has looked very hard for them, and she found a few. But mostly what she found in her field research were just songs that could be sung anywhere, that were sung anywhere, and had really nothing to do with Idaho. They were just brought here.
Do you write songs that include Idaho history?
When I find a compelling story, a compelling historical figure, early figure of Idaho, but I can't find a song or a poem about it, then I try to get one of my singer-songwriter friends around the state who understands the subject matter well to come up with a plausible song. And if that fails, the last resort is for me to write a song. So I've done that. I'm working on the 23rd CD booklet, interpretive booklet project about Idaho songs right now. This one's on the Hells Canyon region. Might be the last one because, I'm 78 and I picked the low-hanging fruit at this point. But there's always more to find. And when I go out and do a program, I always invite people to teach me a real Idaho song early about something that happened before radio came.
Wow. So what is one of the most surprising or overlooked stories that you've uncovered about Idaho's past?
Well, it's interesting. There are two states that were passed over in the Western migrations. One of those is my home state of West Virginia, and the other is Idaho. Both are mountainous, rugged, filled with individualist people, end of the roaders, people that want to be left alone. And both states were based on extractive industries. And until something worth extracting was found, they were passed over. They were just barriers to getting to a better place. In the case of West Virginia, getting across the Appalachian Mountains into fertile farmland. This would have been in the late 1700s. And in the case of Idaho, they were trying to get to Oregon or Washington or California or Utah. But getting through Idaho was a death march, starting with Lewis and Clark and all the way, until gold was discovered. Nobody paid much attention to Idaho. And it took the discovery of gold in the early 1860s to bring Euro-Americans to Idaho to stay. Despite the fact that hundreds of thousands of people came across the Oregon Trail, but very few of them stayed. And the impact that they made was largely tracks in the desert and Indian wars.
Wow. Are there any particular regions or communities in Idaho whose stories you've focused on?
Yeah, I've been in literally just about every library and museum, large and small, in the state of Idaho, looking for songs. So that would take me to, there are not a lot of paved roads I haven't traveled in Idaho. So from, the Bear Lake region all the way up to Bonners Ferry.
Wow.
And over to Georgia Valley. So, yeah, turns out that one of the most interesting areas is the Silver Valley, the Coeur d'Alene Valley. And that's because of the history of strife in the silver mines. And that's always been, no matter where you go in the United States, ripe with folk songs and protest songs, complaining about one thing or another, usually about the bosses, poor working conditions, and so on. So the Coeur d'Alene Valley has been really, really fertile for me for finding what I'm looking for. True event ballads of Idaho.
Wow. And what's one historical myth about Idaho you'd like to correct or clarify?
Historical myth. Well, what you find when you kind of study story songs is that people are basically the same as they were 4,000 years ago. You can find some of the same threads running through stories in the Bible as you do today, including complaints about politicians.
Wow.
And so Idaho is not an exception to that. So I think maybe Idaho isn't so different as a lot of people think it might be, because people are people and they're subject to the same foibles, temptations, and so on that they were 4,000 years ago.
Tomorrow you're playing at the Rooted Meadows Waldorf School. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I was contacted by them, and it sounds as though they're trying to extend some of their folk programs further out into the communities. And what I do is these programs I do are kind of perfect for highlighting that. And so I will do an hour-long program. I'll tell some stories, sing some stories, and perform some songs and poems about those stories. Roughly chronologically, starting in 1811, when the Astoria expedition, the first white party to cross southern Idaho, came through with a fantastically interesting Native American woman who became known as Marie Dorian, whose story is, I believe, even more amazing than Sacagawea's, but very few people know the story today. And chronologically up to, actually I'm doing one song from the 1930s, which is a little past my usual time span, but it's a song by a Basque Mustanger. That is a man who went out and collected wild horses the manly way, on horses, not by helicopters. And it's just such a wonderful closing song and insight into the ranching history of Southwest Idaho and the Basque influence in Idaho, and many stops in between.
Wow. And what time will this event be at?
I think I'm playing at 6:30 to 7:30.
Okay, perfect.
And as I mentioned, I always invite people to teach me story songs about interesting people and events of early Idaho, and also culturally related adjacent areas. For example, I did a project with one of my musicology heroes, Hal Cannon, some years ago, on southeast Idaho and North Utah. And the cultures usually don't respect arbitrary political boundaries. So it's the same people doing the same things on each side of the Utah southeast Idaho border. So I'm not strictly connected to political boundaries, but cultural boundaries, and those are usually defined most places by rivers, not by mountains, by the way. So the Hells Canyon project I'm working on will extend over into the Wallowa Mountains in Oregon, on the Oregon side of Hells Canyon, because they're both mining, ranching people, and they would wash back and forth across the river all the time, just as people would go back and forth from the Teton Valley to Jackson Hole, back and forth, similar cultures.
Wow.
Similar stories.
Is there anything else you'd like to share about Idaho's history or preserving music from Idaho's past?
Well, what I found a couple hundred songs later is that it confirmed my belief that just people who came here from eastern United States, including my home state of West Virginia, they did not stop writing songs when they got here. Those songs just got lost along the way. There's more out there to be found, but I'm at the point now that people have to bring them to me. So I'm certain that there is a cedar box somewhere in an attic in your area, in the Rexburg area, that belonged to great-great-great-grandmother, and it's got some songs or poems in there that have not seen the light of day in 100 years. That's what I'm after. But I can't find those if people don't bring them to me.
So people need to come prepared tomorrow.
Bring your voice. If you don't want to sing the song, you can just tell me about it, and we'll go from there.
Perfect. Well, Gary, thank you so much for coming on and talking with us.
Oh, thank you for the interest. Appreciate it.